So like the minimum reduction right now that goes in that specific Squid Game that even regardless of like the fact that that in a Squid Game candidate has to be going to like the roles of that villain has to be eliminated in each of like the house that even regardless of that condition that the fact that even after like this new candidate come to like the agreement to and like fixing on their target as like mentioned in like the first hour like the fact that the Squid Game candidate all of them like who has faced all this like uh, all the like extremely dangerous and like dangerous and ruthless like previous games of like the elimination game in like the first game as well as like the in like the first game then having played the two game where like the platform they had to play the two game and move around in like the game it's actually far narrower than like the platform of like the tower of the business game in like the jump of the game and the fact that like not only the platform was like so extremely narrow but like narrower, but also the fact that like they had to constantly survive the jump off as well for them to like cross and make it until they cross and make it to like the finish line. Fact that they have already played Squid Games in like the first Squid Game as well as in the fourth game of like them having to like totally having in like the fourth game having played like the game of like elimination Squid Game. Like the fact that they have faced like such half and half Squid Games already before making it to like the sixth game and like just like the fact that in like the sixth game, all of a sudden like all the shooting candidates suddenly being so extremely soft and it is really scared to like play the shooting like even after like fixing like the target as like into in like the very first tower like the fact that like all the shooting candidates like basically being so extremely hesitant and afraid to that execute like the whole animation to attempt to like execute like the whole animation of that game. So even after like them having played like the animation game of like the whole game like and not only that but like the fact that like even in like the second tower like they when like shooting candidates have like basically fixed the target on that instead of like fixing straight away fixing the target on like Sanjo like they them that was so much of like project time trying to like separate Sanjay from like, the bin and everything. So that regardless that why the Syrian candidates to have like totally targeted Sanjay in like the regardless of regardless of even attempting for like the and wasting so much precious time for like the preparation coming to like Sanjay. Like basically, regardless, while they could have totally focused on like use taking advantage of the support, not only in like the straight away taking advantage of the ball, not only in like the first half, but also in like the second half, like straight away focus on eliminating Sanjon in like the second half. Uh, um, and so that like basically like the third tower, like the strongest among them would be surviving in like the third tower, like basically regardless of that they are assisting a teamwork in like the third tower talking on is the fact that like Chicken Candidate have already played like the previous two like the 2024 games were like situations like the strongest only survives like they could like they have faced like scenarios like they even in like the even in like the fourth game like the league since it was I think like it wasn't just like the red team members alone was that wasn't just eliminating like the blue team members like since like the blue team members as well will not forget survival I think had like eliminated like red team members as well in like the elimination game of the what to win. The fact that they have gone through such extreme dangers and even more difficult two games and before making it to like the game of like the round of game and basically the fact that all of the other ones they made it through like the round of game that basically the second candidate for getting being so soft and basically getting or so being all of the being so extremely they are kind of afraid to like play like the sixth game might be due to like the nature of like the sixth game which might be a lot less consciously made to be like a lot less difficult when the nature of the game consciously being decided and fixed by imports would be a lot less difficult when compared to like the form as well as like the physical game. Might be like that will give limitations of minimum service and certainly import system might have been that like while in like the first game as well as like in like the physical game that solely reading that the fact of that like the nature of the nature itself of like the first game as well as the physical game being so smoothly dangerous and uh, setting up like the setting like info might have wanted for like in the case of the like the final game of like physical game like the nature of like the physical game cannot be difficult, but instead will have that causing that the fact of that like the physical game would relatively like less a lot less difficult when compared to like the fourth as well as like the physical game like that factor and on resulting in like the Squid candidates like while playing like Squid game starting to like overthink to think like the Squid game is like on the verge of that completing like the entire Squid game and getting like the reward money like to create that to turn like the Squid game into such a scenario where like the players would be ending up overthinking to such extremes, and basically that might have been what kind of happened. Like, that might have been like that overthinking which like info might have been hoping to happen in like the game might have been what kind of happened and might have been what might have resulted in like all of a sudden in like this games like these decisions could get and if you have faced all this that even extreme even more dangerous and difficult thinking of like the ball as well as to gain that all of that experience was really yeah um, and hesitant to like play that successful game might be due to that whole thing, extreme whole thing that might have played out and that swing fear anticipation that comes with that extreme whole thing that might have happened in like it might have been like the basis that really might have been and this might have been the reason for like the game candidates that in that successful game being totally so extremely scared of that basically even attending like the elimination of that Linkwood as well as that even like them that it might be doing this mixing or thing like that they might have been also in like the second half might have been probably like facing a lot of first time trying to like separate something from like the lead as well as like in like that final third cover like the fact that like even like Tenjico and guys someone who in like the fourth game of the elimination game had like eliminated like so many of like the Chilean candidates and that even while cleaning up with like the plan of for still the fact that then one guy in after like already winning that um, even after already winning like the first two games that we the fact that we kept on like going on with like whole rampage with like none of and like without any preparation in the winners pick none of like had eliminated that many great number of players to the candidates, including chosen and yet like the fact that all of them like once like the Indian guy has made it to like like all of them and like even while having that extreme advantage of that for not only the Indian guy but all of the Brazilian candidates like having that extreme advantage of that having that long and solid sword in that each of the tower that they could have only taken that absolute extreme advantage to that they eliminate to quickly eliminate any player that they target like basically yet like the fact that even like then Bitcoin guy, someone like then Bitcoin guy as well like being so extremely scared of that basically letting Sanjon into that the third tower and so desperate to like attempt like the attempt and take that zero of that basically trying like the getting that using the board and like that way to get the baby towards like the third house and that way to that for then to the guy as well someone like then when they when we go the threat to and like to quit that the significant while in such an easy manner while being totally afraid of that even while they are being that uh, even while it being like just another illness to him, and even while like the even had guy had like the advantage of that the fall with him, using the fall as well with him. Yeah, like then the guy being so full of sudden being so extremely afraid of like Sanjay, and basically like the possibility that will lose into like Sanjay in that the fight in like the first hour, and basically also the fact that like then the guy like sudden extreme lack of like trust on Sanjay as well, on making it to like the third tower basically that the fact that like the Luton guy had that swift suspicion towards like Sangyong like not keeping his word and basically not agreeing to be like the sacrifice so that like the Luton guy ended up really could that like the win like the again the fact that like then the guy again then the guy himself had actually witnessed like Sangyong like everything his life put his life on that extreme because just to like say like the lady or the penguin guy in like the studian of like the jump of studian the fact that penguin that had seen all this and yet like this very same penguin guy having this like extreme doubt and suspicion into like someone word that like Sanjay will be like the sacrifice so that like the penguin guy and like the lady could that win like the could win that the fact that like penguin guy still was like only refusing to use Sanjay that this might all be connected and it might be all due to not like actual extreme difficulty of like the nature. Might be connected to like the lack of that difficulty, most likely connected to like the lack of that difficulty of like the situation and like the situation of like the situation being like so close to like Sweden is making it to like the ultimate goal of like the money. That situation creating that difficulty creating that on thinking scenario which will be creating that through which that the thinking candidates themselves while being in a less difficult situation like through their own thinking alone, like creating that absolute pressure and difficulty on themselves might be like the case. Exactly, like might be due to lack of consummation, might have been due to that then you can like often alone. This might have been like then you can like totally forgetting about like Sangyong the students like to like protect like the baby in like the first school game in like jump off school game and easily then you can guy totally even in like the sixth game in the third like then you can guy even suspecting Sangyong and not believing Sangyong while Sangyong like totally uh, offers like then you can guy to see that sacrifice so that like when you can guy and the baby would like survive and then like the sixth game and everything like it might have been that I was overthinking and like the scare and fear and pressure that will be created through that extreme or in by like this by use of the speaking candidate which that I'm looking like info might have been totally expecting and going for by making like the good game of like the tower good game like a competitive solution is actually a lot less difficult than compared to like the first good game of like the elimination game as well as like the the game of like the controls to think might be like that related to the situation and might have been involvement that happened. It's definitely my personal theory and perspective. So like basically in short like the current things that is used info it might have been obvious for info that like thinking candidates are like facing like the fork as well as like the fifth game extreme difficult fork as well as the fifth game that it might be obvious for that info that like as for like the sixth game that the speaking candidates might be totally expecting something even more extremely difficult than like the fork as well as like the fifth game. So that at that point, once like the sixth game would be taken, that to totally give them that unexpected shock by making that the sixth game that unexpectedly a lot easier when compared to like the fourth and fifth game. So that like that way to create like a confusion between like the speaking candidates and that way through that confusion to that have like each of the speaking candidates ending up starting to like overthink and that way to like make that factor of like overcoming that ultimate obstacle that like the each of the speaking candidate to have to like solve and survive in order to survive like the school game and like to hopefully create that the probability of that extreme forcing in between like the speaking candidate to like cause like them to like totally mess up like the school game which might have been like the difficulty of the music game, which like might have even resulted in like eventually like each of like the single candidates like messing up in like the sixth game. Might have been like something that involved might have consciously been expecting to happen as for like by setting up like the good game to be like that's how good game. Might be like that with the big situations that even so yes, so like the near my in the temperature right now is the play for like the exact locations are like done for looking for info would be definitely a person and looking at like definitely at like the front man what is like where I'm the point example the first have a it's like the scenario that everybody that way like I'm trying like the scenario thing like especially since like neon as well it's like they need like trying to like save that setting to that so preparing so and with like info right now like the person being in that exact game play area like just preparing that for that without a great delay that info getting eliminated by me all next in the scenario that I'm going to do so definitely I'm preparing that for info to like show up to like the play areas only preparing like it might be for like info to definitely and I'm sitting there my preparation that like info might totally have that electric person might be totally have some sort of like a term like in that so like listen up and like or like towards like end of like the attendant participant like info might have been totally hoping to like have a good company be able to like corrupt and change Sangyong into that three like that exact same ideology of that of Ingo and that way to like pass on like the pattern of the current game to Sangyong and like I was usually I was trying one like Sangyong and I was like the way had made it to competing like the digital game like at that point like info in a certain manner helping Sangyong how so that like Sangyong and like the baby will be ending up becoming like the winners of like the sibling that as well might have been actually for like importing along to the extent of like not only having like Sangyong around like experience from 2025 but also that way along with like Sangyong like one of the areas will that will leave them like the winners of like the game which might have been like that absolute golden role that like might have been passed down by enough towards like into that is not for like a person to be deserving to be qualified to like around like the students that person should be should at least once play and complete and become the winner of this game for 1 year. Might be that golden also I'm sitting to my friends that even in might have been the winner of that student all the way back in that the rating of students in that 1999 might have been the present. That way like a compliment in might definitely not be that fourth creator of that student that might have taken place in that 1999. In fact, then might have been only a student candidate, might have been the case of me. So like that creator might have passed on the baton to now, and he might have also passed on that golden role that is the only winner of that student that deserving to around next student. So that Vietnam eventually might have that passed on that not only that baton but along with the baton the role as well to it as well might be the case. And that we have to think about that like the lucky guy. I'm talking that info being that just of that Vietnam and that the lucky guy being Vietnam that second son and it was actually might be the case. Yet I'm talking that the lucky guy most likely directly not having some played games or kind of became the winner of the game and maybe the reason for the lucky guy feeling to have that certain extent of jealousy to protect the lucky guys enemies having a great extent of feeling to have a great extent of jealousy connected to the fact that San John is next to game winner might be already to this film brain. So now might have been only hoping on being able to pass on the pattern to the lucky guy. After the having the lucky guy faces fears the lucky guy might have had that atmosphere to compete and play this team. Yeah, info might have been only confident in the lucky guy skills and everything, and it might have been only been that exactly might have been only been that just the lucky guy fear knows that of only putting himself into playing and an actual opening to win that fear alone that is keeping the lucky guy from being able to get the baton and run maybe along the lines both in them as well as team both might have been used. So definitely it might have been info advantageous game that what info might have been used as that necessary input so that the lucky guy to have that the lucky guy faces fears by actually playing a game other than the lucky game and to have the lucky guy actually play proper get the taste of that game by having by forcing that in the into that situation of playing that wrestling role as kind of a game with Sanjay, which might have totally for him from but might have only the Latin guys to end up becoming winner might have totally ended up playing that the guys elimination by Sanjay and that way that as a revenge might have at that point self might have decided to not only and bring Sanjay into the 20 game and to really help Sanjay get eliminated to the but also to take that revenge and that suffering Sanjay by at that point the moment if I might have realized something found out about that then elimination by Sanjay that at that point that information straight away even targeted it's on Jones from jump as well and might have into the game. I thought decided to the can do might have been the case so after the years and in his hope might have been even though the family members most likely not having much time only hope might have been for the boardman part to be able to for to be able to pass on the baton to the boardman part until by the next year or in the stadium that will be and to have the boardman park around the stadium whom I'm so preparing might be an next stadium uh, around just the games so the protein around game to 2025 or 2026 the second on my him so the thing being able to find a new higher the winner of either 2025 games or 22 games 2026 games to have either one of them the boardman pass cheering and being able to pass on so that don't be either the winner in the year 2025 or the of kind of might be along the lines info might have 10 place that on the boardman park when eventually info finding out about Shogun finding out about the relation of that partner. That info so much might have been even more than info most likely having that friendship with partner, even way more than that it might have been due to info most likely having felt that approach shock on finding out about what things might have been due to info feeling that is at that point info having absolutely no one to pass on the serving person to pass on the pattern of around the experience. So at that point might have been when info might have started to focus on Sanjay might have its mind to basically switch from revenge to basically to like change the to hopefully and then that's the demand of to like change Sanjo and his like idea again to turn Sanjo hopefully get like simply change Sanjo into like turning into a person expecting like info and maybe that way by the end of like the to have like that way when I'm man up and through security helping to like have that Sanjo and that become the winner of like the 2024 and that way to like pass on like the baton to like Sanjo might be what like information of also then eventually that with that Jantri's you actually having a daily and everything like at that point like info might have been actually been pleased because like from Info's point of view that info might have been thinking that like after conjunct so that way that if that can was able to that save and like eventually once like info might have seen that Sanjay that taking that sort of responsibility of like protecting his media and everything at that point as well info might have been totally pleased because like info might have been totally hoping for like that desirable eventual scenario for like info to have like Sanjay along with that today with that became like unit of experience with the so that like info will give like in a satisfying manner will be able to like pass on like the baton running like, to like Sanjay and eventually like the different things are like Sanjay will be able to like pass on the baton to like the baby once like the baby will be done to another since like the baby along with like Sanjay will give that weapons like it was finally getting of becoming like the winner of the university and that way would be end up becoming qualified and deserving to like run it so like this much like info might have planned to definitely in like the percent of like info would be having that a good shock of them with the elimination of that unexpected which might have been extremely unexpected for like info like the elimination of that Sanjay and definitely totally putting like right now with like info totally showing up to like the civilian play area while 30 minutes alone remaining this might be totally with like the siren ring and everything like it might be most likely a civilian building self destruction time of like 30 minutes might be the case so like info right now even showing up to like the 6 billion play area might be totally to that until that by the time like the baby becomes like another like listen to within that point like they need to have that person that to find that possible person for like who will be able to like that ingrain like into like thought ideologies connected to like experience and create like a passion of like running like the experience uh, into that person by the time that person grows up into like another so that like in the future at least like like experience will like continue uh, on like and by having that person like eventually uh, like that way at that point on becoming an adult taking on the background and doing experience will be along the lines and like both might be totally respect and like for that to happen right now it's definitely not present. So like to make all that possible like I'm like info right now just going up to like the play area like 20 might be with that absolute intent to that to actually save like the baby and that escape with like the baby most likely in a helicopter uh, before like for 30 minutes time or then the destruction will be like over. Maybe like the reason for like info right now going up to like the city and play area right now is definitely done different. So like we have different like even by like the self destruction like but it's like timer is like setting timer is like happen the fire and everything. So like at this point like in the elevator of like the towers like won't be in such a situation won't be functioning at all. Might be the case that we will like maybe a bit about that info right now have most likely from a secret and unique key with like info which might be like the only way of like bypassing like the bypassing like the barrier of like the 30 minutes self destruction timer to still hopefully have like the embedded function in and that way for like info to like to be safe and need and escape the flexibility might be what like info right now totally different would be much like any attempting. But like and I'm looking for like even and also right now totally different that like that green liquid that basically that city of back in like the 2020 student like from that air ventilation pathway had basically softly seen that the student was preparing like that might be like I'm putting another premission might be like highly intense and acid that which might like the purpose of like the student was like preparing that green liquid might be to like dissolve away even like the bomb of like the eliminated football candidates and that way to that get rid of like any sort of evidence at all. Something to that all the great number of elimination happening in like the game. Once like the game to be over, usually up like might be the case that you know the trend to like something that green liquid might be also stealthy where like certain involved Indians as like might be the case supplement claim. So like I think who might be right now will be wanting to like before like 30 minutes time around or like for like for himself to like to carry out that offer like getting rid of that something spot might be the case and also to basically escape any uh, before like the time of setting the time of so like the baby system might be what like info would be right now planning and should be attempting but like I'm becoming even before info would be even able to plan to any of that like I'm looking like right now it's a good like New York like totally totally that like leaving that performance of definitely New right now will be definitely attempting to like change the baby. So like definitely I'm referring like the top of play delay like New York to see that showing up to like some gameplay area and that's that point I was referring that for info most likely would be like staring at like eliminated front and at that point, I'm with the like Neo will be probably like seeing like the front man, and I'm thinking, like at that point, like Neo will be feeling extremely enraged because of like the front man. I think like having kept that crucial information of like Neo's like found out of like having this eliminated and basically that way keeping that information a secret from Neo and that way freaking and like probably using Neo as like a civilian blocker to send out and like basically you know, would be after like talking finding out about like about sunflower being known of like in the league. New York would be might be probably feeling extremely enraged towards like the studios and towards like the permanent and so like the player second one like New York would be making it to like studios like and to be strongly seeing like permanent the first one like the player at that point said like New York first one might be from so like New York at that point said like totally eliminating like the permanent goal. Just like the major scenario that I was bringing. And at that when that exactly happens, I'm going to bring that Janho would have made it to like the home of like the permanent and would be through that monster would be strongly seeing that that we live once like Janho would be finally thinking at that point that is finally he has made it towards that info and finally he will be most likely able to like save in hope that at that point, like Janho, that aspect was happening in that Janho's life, and basically that Janho softly witnessing as like Neon would be pointing like the weapon at like Invo and would be like at that point then like I'm Janho from like the comment room would be shouting out. But like I'm definitely that like no one hearing like from the shout of like Janho and like at that point like Janho through that monster witnessing like Neon eliminating from like the scenario and everything and at that point, I'm looking for like the shop Janko also getting another kill shot to like maybe through that monster at that point, like Janko also noticing that the front of like the baby on top of like that third tower. So like Janko did only talk and consistent Janko and then race Janko did only rushing towards like the stadium play area. And I'm looking like at that point like seeing Jang Ho like I'm like Neon won't be attacking like Jang Ho. And I'm looking like Jang Ho will be in an race manner will be running towards like Neon and basically and Jang Ho at that point would be so skinny and right now will be struggling and like preventing himself on that protecting Neon and basically will be like shouting out to like Neon that basically that that's my that's like Janko's product that basically Neon had eliminated. So like at that point I'm like Neon as well will be feeling extremely enraged already and will be feeling so dumb and something like Neon at that point will be shouting back to like Janko at that point that telling Janko like look at what like Janko's product have done. Like basically at that point like Janko will be shockingly like softly like if you go at that point that I'm for example will be even shockingly noticing like Sangyong's like designated Sangyong like lying nearby like the scenario and like you auto be while saying this like I'm for example also softly hearing like the screen of that Janpi shot from the baby from like the top of the sound as well and Janko will be totally shocked like and at that point Neo would be shouting back again at like Janko saying that like because of like Janko's mother like they see like basically like the end up building is like about to like just in like 30 minutes and in the that baby all by himself in like the top of like that tower. Be along the lines of like New would be shouting back at like Jumbo. So like at that point, I'm like Jumbo would be feeling so extremely that disturbed at that point. And I'm like definitely Jumbo not thinking about anything else at all, and definitely will be definitely the only thing in Jumbo's mind at that point will be definitely to save like the lady. So like that way, like at that point, I was referring to like Jumbo like would be quickly seeing supporting like the steps and basically as like Jumbo would be about to climb steps like like maybe like New York failing chunk of that basically that like there's no like that the step end without making it to like the very top of like the third power to the other line that neon at that point would be that looking at like the end point of like the step to be telling that would be rushing at that point like the scenario and that's stopping the point like and at that point like you're maybe feeling that maybe you're about to like info showing up to like the area or maybe to like take the baby with like info. So like I'm looking at neon probably expecting like the pockets of like the eliminated info and then we were finding that he and I'm looking for like new or probably hoping that is the pretty hoping that he will be fitting into like that at that point like by then like New York was also sporting like the elevator. So like New York only hoping that he fits into like the elevator and that way like that happening and basically New York along with like example for like taking the elevator and quickly making it to like the top of the third tower and feeling like the baby and like starting therefore from that again building and desperately trying to like make it outside at like a safe distance from like the stadium building before like the 30-minute time up would be over. This is like only one possibility that I'm looking at. The other possibility that I'm referring is for like definitely even though I'm also referring like there might be a key in that like pocket a key to that having like the key to that use like the elevator like I'm still and I got your no example of not being able to like see such a possibility and basically instead like I'm looking like jump at that point like telling you that basically put them both maybe totally like finding like the elevator and basically like them both would be totally trying to like operate the elevator but like it's only operating so like Neol at that point telling them so that it's essentially like the siren is going on like basically that the elevator won't on just along the line like Neol will be telling Jumbo so like at that point I'm looking like Jumbo totally rushing through the steps like making it to like the very top of like the steps and yet like from the very top of like the steps like example having that absolute top of them basically uh from where like the step end to that to climb vertically to making it to like the top of like the platform to like say maybe so like right example would be dangerous and would be finally struggling with pain to like making it towards like the baby like at that point like just also realizing like the situation he will be in but like by the number like maybe 10 minutes alone might be remaining at all. There's like the possibility that I mean, so like example at that 10 or 15 minutes alone might be remaining at that one step. So maybe you know that when the host of your realization difficult season and like John Hope would be probably feeling absolutely hopeless as like being absolutely no vector for like John Hope to like make it down the tower reflect the baby. So at that point I'm even like John Hope probably hearing that the sound of like neon totally falling off for like John Hope and that was like neon at that point would have sort of like that still would have started her way into like making it to the top of like the stairs. So like and like so like Neol at that point from like the top of like the stairs would be like struggling and they've been trying to like extend her one of her arms and he would be like shouting out to like jump out to like basically hand over with the baby to like Neol that like she will definitely save like the baby like the scenario that I'm looking for that even if that Neol uh takes to survive like she will still ensure that the baby is protected along the line like Neol location. And at that point I was like Janko eventually maybe that initially refusing and yet like seeing the time of like time ticking off like I'm for like Janko eventually decided to and like initially after doing Janko did only uh, telling me all that basically to definitely instead of like doing that for them to like wait until like the coast guard makes it for like the coast guard to like make it to like that civilian play area and that they would be able to like save the baby. But like I'm like time would be like picking up and basically like the coast guards not showing up like both like Jumbo to the cinema will be getting separated and that way like I'm putting like them taking that up being late and like Jumbo trying to like get the baby to New York and at that point I'm doing like New York totally losing her balance and yet like I'm afraid New York by then would have caught the baby and I'm looking like then that fall like New York totally uh, uh, take that up with care to like keep the baby protected and that way like Neil getting eliminated get like Neil keeping her word and basically that way that's what cushioning like Neil making it possible and that way like while Neil will be getting eliminated like the baby surviving which like that's enough that I'm able to survive. Yet at that point like Jumbo will get only feeding us like so like basically this is it and basically Jumbo will get only hoping that basically before like the time around town like for like the coast guard to like at least make it so that like they at least even if like jump off into like kilometer like at least like the baby survive will be along the lines of like an instinct leave self the man jump out the thing so like Janko would be totally could be feeling after like if we can accepting this like faith along the line with Janko will be feeling and like Janko will be strongly feeling that this is it, like this is their thought and Janko's journey and like and Janko would be totally also feeling confused between like disappointment, the feeling of disappointment that like he wasn't able to like save info as well as like split between like the feeling of like basically Janko feeling thinking as in a confused manner like as if like whether info even deserves to be saved like basically that way like Janko would be probably that in a split and basically would be solely uh, would have given up on like basically any chance of like survival. It would be when like I'm the postcard finally making it to that VM area and at that point I'm maybe 10 minutes alone might be remaining. So like at that point, like Jumbo will be shouting out to like the postcard from the top of the tower for them to like quickly take the baby and escape and to get like the baby to escape from like the Indian building that like the building that is also like the like the ambulance which Jumbo will be shouting out. But like I'm sorry like the postcard like I'm like split it into like two teams with like the one team that will be like rushing out with like the baby out of the stadium building while like the team B will be definitely like probably the opposition like the focus would have at that point will be having like support with the man which like they will be totally using and basically saving like saving Janko by the time like 5 minutes alone would be remaining is like the scenario that and then like and super like it's got to be like chunk of items and course that's like making that intense run towards like exit trying to like attempt to like exit like game building and get a safe distance from like the game building before like the timer runs out and like the game building itself is like it's like the scenario that I'm looking relevant. Yeah, like I'm doing like really jump off along with like the fourth like basically that way succeeding in like making it at a safe distance from like the game building by the time like the game building conditions the front end like my scenario that I'm looking that way like I'm finding that the only survivors that at that point uh, being like Chanto and like the baby alone like given the scenario that I'm looking and my creation and basically about my generation totally trying like during that whole struggle and like combined team effort of like Neo and Janko to like save the baby and that point like Neo could be also telling Janko that if Neo doesn't make it then like Janko has to like promise Neo to like feed her and for like the baby and take care of it the baby with their young friends like Neo will make Janko promise while they will be like like putting in their teamwork and like trying to like figure out the way to like save the baby then at that point it's like looking out of that so like that way like other organization to liberate against the New York very clean and through New York sacrifice like the daily playing a major role in like the daily being safe and that way like I'm just trying like the daily showing up with like Janko eventually is like telling the scenario Janko totally adopting like the daily like telling the like the daily of Jamie is like telling the scenario that I'm looking at the great number okay, so like definitely my 3% right now it's definitely for like you know to like make it definitely make it to like this gameplay area before like info will be able to like leave with like the daily like start of the game of now that I'm doing. So at that point itself I'm looking like an encourage like seeing like the front man with like the daily like I'm doing like you know I'm looking like extremely enraged like on top of like that extreme craze like that will be person in like the person looking like you know connecting to like the front man having like freaking out with like the feeling that the about like the logs of that Neo and that on note like basically so we able to bring Neo at that point shouting out in an enraged manner to like man to like separate himself from like the baby and step aside. So that at that point I'm like info suddenly refusing to do so. It's like the scenario and that info will straight away will be walking towards like Neo. So like at that point I'm like Neo totally taking that perfect aim and I'm just like Neo totally eliminating info. It's like the scenario that by the time like Jungho would be making it towards like the gameplay area like Jungho like totally would be hearing like the sound of like weapon immediately at that point like Jungho would be totally would be like rushing in and basically behind like Jungho's in like the back of like Jungho's mind like Jungho would have that fear of about to get like uh info maybe like that sound of like weapon possibly like info getting eliminated. So like jump for making there and like jump for shortly finding out that like that fear ending up in a reality and like you see that Neil at that point will be like taking like the baby and basically would be like that will be rushing out struggling to like rush out like the to begin building was like scenario that I'm doing. And at that point, I'm trying to form like a few like John Ho having seen like in those like really taking like taking it from like I'm definitely like John Ho with only feeling that like it was like villains probably having that cross all extent of like all limits and basically so like John Ho and the like won't be getting enraged or like shouting out like you know like at that point like definitely only thing in like John Ho's mind to that will be to like get that baby out of like the Squid Game predict before like the self-destruction time of on top of like the scenario that I was saying. And definitely I was in that way that with like John Ho totally and John Ho would be totally feeling that basically the like even with like New York being in that Squid Game longer even from like John Ho totally feeling that basically with the positive of like they are being goodness within like New York it's also like about that and that way I'm definitely John Ho not uh like like not at all attacking Neon, but like I'm like Jungle around like Neon and like the baby, making it making the absolute on super six and out of like the Squid Game building and like then securing at that in time. And like that way that Jungle like Neon and like the baby that making it out and reaching a place difference when like the like Squid Game building the self destructions like the and I'm looking like that making a huge sound and definitely I'm looking like the post start by then it would have probably made it to like the location was like the past billion candidate would be that both was like the past billion candidate to be. So that definitely them hearing the sound of like see this person and like without the really at all like I'm thinking like the question like making it to like the game and then that way like along with like Jumbo and Neon like Jumbo Neon and like the baby getting on to like the both of like the gift of like the posters like what's an app that I'm looking at and at that point I'm so different like and Neon even though Neon would be having that actual pain of like that shocking realization of like the sudden realization of like Neon's like home daughter like being no like and even though Neon will be totally certainly will be absolutely certain that like the baby won't be able to the baby certainly won't be able to like replace Neon like thought home daughter like still American like Neon would be that would be like and countries that baby would be that only hope that Neon would have at that point to hold on to that baby uh, to like, keep going on in that like life and basically at that point like and to that one again experience like the joy of like being a mother like that way like can go in the definitely that by Neon will be able to turn back with like the baby like at that point like there will be that side of like Neon that will be full of hopes of like a brand new fresh start in life and being able to like live with like the baby as like the standard of like, the baby of like and like live with like the baby as like the baby month along the lines like so like with such folks like New York along with like the Rosa and like Jungle would be heading back to like the mainland is like the scenario that I'm going to make and frame and definitely I'm whispering like Janko would be definitely on that way back like I'm doing Janko definitely having that super interaction as well with like Windows. Now this like you know but like Janko it's a game that's extremely high priority for like Janko to like ensure that like you know think back like this person and basically like would be a safe environment for like the baby to grow up in. So like to ensure that I'm just like on the way back like Janko and like she's like asking for the 2 years connection to like Neon like as for like whether Neo is like an active speaking worker for like a speaking candidate, like the guys in like the favor like a speaking worker, and basically as to like why Neo has eliminated like from man, and basically the lines like the entire detail of like Neo, like and for example, asking that uh, during that whole conversation, I was like Neo even revealing about like the whole situation with like the past speaking candidate and his like lot of basically like the experience like Neo has have gone through to like say the past speaking candidate and for like a lot of it about like music. And at that point, I was going through that in practice, like that was having that absolute realization that like that neon would definitely that has to do great mother for like and that for like the reflecting scenario that I'm doing on the script. Okay, so like definitely everything very interesting right now, but that is maybe by the time that neon has got to that sixth game that play area like import might have already made it to like to select helicopter. But like the data might be the case happening on the ground. So like those exact two helicopters that flew off on that set of objects that to be building before like the census of them. So like in one of those future purposes, it might have been like one of the at least shipping from like the first game building and like the other helicopter it might have been team of along with like the date that might have made them get out of that first game building even back then. Might have been the case. It's definitely my friend. So that way like I'm going for New York by the time New York might have especially like New York hurting like by the time New York could have made it to like the gameplay area like like Sinhope might have for like more than enough time to that totally to escape with like the baby to like the top towards like the helicopter. Might have been the case definitely not correct. And even like and definitely info might be knowing all the entirety of like the secret pathways like existing within like the game building that even what like Janko even plotting info and like info had taken like but it's still that not even Janko might have been able to definitely catch up towards that info. Might have been the case is definitely much different. So like definitely it might have definitely not be in a scenario where like Janko might have brought up to that info and might have totally allowed info to that escape or anything. Might definitely not be the case, definitely not different. So like that way might have taken that absolute secret pathway existing some within like the game building to that quickly making it to like the help of like really and might have just get already might have been the case definitely not different. So like that right now my preference for like that specific skill game worked up on like the ship carrying all the skill game of the out of like the skill game island like I mean and that similar specific skill game worked up might actually be in your definitely my preference. So like I think like what she has was is like the weapon that info fact gave sound of like the fastest what I think. So definitely preferring like for near that I'm preferring like would be in like definitely right now might have assumed that basically definitely like the format might have totally the might have totally prioritize himself and the phone safety and like the safety of like the VIP alone so that you all might have straight away assumed that like the frontman might have get without saying like the baby with him. So like you all I'm looking like after not finding like the baby at like this gameplay area like and like you know, what we all might have assumed might have been that like might have been maybe one of like the game workers that might have taken like the baby might be along the lines like you all might have assumed and that way like you all might have probably decided to like before like specific uh, taking like the full game workers out of like the game and like leave like New York might have decided to like only might have assumed that like the baby so like the baby might be definitely somewhere on that ship so like definitely I'm looking like to find out where like the baby is and to take the baby and escape with this intent like different that you know might have only got amount to like that might have been what might have happened is definitely meant to game so definitely that's the game of cartoon I think like have like weapon that would be most likely in your uh it's definitely my friend so like definitely I'm looking for like New York eventually like to instantly like something like the entire while like that chip containing like game of plus would be like making journey to like the mainland like New York that has still like searching for across like the ship while like still not being like finding like the way at all. It's like being the scenario that I'm developing and that way for New York like to be absolutely it's been very disturbed and frustrated with like New intellectual person like having that having learned that absolute realize having had that absolute realization that of the whole that is being on own daughter is like no more like and like New after like seeing like the baby on top of the tower like might have been totally like hoping that is the like could like save the baby and uh, and then to like somehow manage to like make it out of that civilian building and be able to like live with like that baby and like that baby is like not okay along the lines of the like you might have had that right kind of hope at that moment name solution. But like I'm thinking like for like given the scenario to be like never not finding like the baby at all in that ship. And I'm looking at that point like being totally frustrated and I'm looking like at that point and at that point, I'm preferring like New York probably come down to like the conclusion that it would definitely be like the format that might have definitely taken like the read. To get up the right like a conclusion that like New York will be coming down to like New York from that point on like so to fix it in her mind to like definitely end up into like the 2025 school game as like a school game worker. And basically that in the 2025 school game 2025 school game to like definitely target that info and basically the format and basically to totally threaten like the government and to get like that through the information out of like the government in like the midway in like the 2025 student to rather than get like information out of like the front man as to like where exactly the baby is, and that way for like New to like save the baby. Maybe along the lines of the different like New would be sitting in my uh, this like the scenario that I'm going to okay, so like me like is your impression right now that like it might have been New and like New plan might have been to like probably by breaking in and basically like stealing all that money of like Sanjay and that Sanjay that was in place that New might be totally planning on like basically entering like the 2020 Squid Game as like one of them to be a lead like with all that money like and like New would be totally hoping to be able to like and into that the Squid Game as like one of like the VIP that way so that like Neo could get that easy access to like the front man because like a fundamental totally burning like by now like Neo might have only back then it might have just like the entirety of like that should carrying like Indian workers and might have came to like the conclusion that like the front man himself might have taken like the baby so like for Neo to like get like the baby back like and like Neo this might be like Neo's plan to like enter into like the 25 games as like one like the VIP as way to be able to like get close to like get close and to see access to like the front man and that way to like launch and look at like against like the front man and to like threaten and get like the information of like the whereabouts of like the baby from like the front man and basically that way to get like the baby back to save and get the baby back. Might be what like New York might be totally planning at this point. Might be like the case that you frame. Okay, so like the still the mem frame between that before like the destruction of like the Indian building that in might out of the escape with like the day from like the help of might be lab might have happened. So you frame so definitely for like the past 6 months like after that it's like I'm supporting the place what Janko might have been like Janko might have been going back to that Sunburst model and basically taking bit by bit of that Sunburst like reward money to like basically continue on where like Sunburst left off for that absolute so for like info might be the case like say Janko like for like the entirety of like the past 6 months might have been temporarily searching for info to like find info might have been the case without any other but those might have been like the case with like Janko might have been the case with Nemo definitely like Janko right now picking up Mr. Choi from like the military and everything. So definitely able to bring it to be for like it would be it might be too tiring for like Janko to like definitely to search for like the front match info all by himself. So definitely able to bring like right now for like Janko to that perfect and Janko might have been patiently even waiting for like definitely there might have been that phone that might have happened throughout like the struggle between like Janko and like Choi together spending time together and everything. So definitely a different example like usually might have been basically waiting for like might have been getting tired of like searching for like the commanding board like example Janko usually might have been basically waiting for Stoy to get released so that like Janko like in like the past will like definitely search for like that the commanding board with like Stoy. Uh might be the case definitely so that was exactly what like I'm trying like Janko right now will be telling Stoy. There's also definitely another tradition that like that they still haven't got like the front man and basically that's like that like their hunt is like still not over like basically that they have to catch up like the man will be along the lines and next and hopefully right now the thing will be telling that the stories like scenario that yet like even still I'm prepared example like mine like example because the thing that we see definitely still would be not still feeling hopeful that definitely will be of like into them being able to like make it once again towards like the front and at that point example we are going to trust in that like he will be able to like definitely direct the choice into thinking that basically the front man still has like the escape while example which is only planning on like initially was making it to lack the front man and hold like at that point to lack only track the choice and create some situations for like the joy and basically at that point for example to lack only cast up lack info and basically to lack okay sort things out but lack info and to lack only example we still having that hope of like ending it finally get through to like info and bring about that absolute change in like info and turn in info back to like that for loving product of Django. Info used to be like also. If you along the line that Django the only thing is definitely on the frame. So definitely right now person like the scenario to be like Django like telling this to like the story that is being that like they still have to like catch up like the front man, and that way like I'm different like destroy would be at that point also will be having something to like look forward to. So like definitely this joy will be getting excited and like joy and I would like to know I'm looking for like the great delay getting back to like Sunburns and water to like get more money. But like at that point I'm looking to like them that shopping first and like a surprise of extreme disappointment happening for like general and joy while they will be making it to like the road where like the money is stored in like Sunburns like model. At that point like I'm like them shortly finding like the entire like the money that like missing is like the scenario that I was. So like definitely New York might have like so definitely my impression that like New York that just on like the previous night like might have been when like New York might have been New York that might have totally steadily integrated into like Sunday like model and might have definitely stolen all the money at like Sanjo one luckily because like I'm pretty remember that like Neol might have definitely been working as like a studio but even during like the 2020 studios and Neol might have definitely been a witness to like Sanjo dealing with Indian becoming the winner of the studios in like 2020. This definitely remember the so Neol might have like found out where exactly by this time like Neol might have found out like where exactly like Sanjon used to live, and basically, definitely, we all might have expected like the possibility of like Sanjon having scored all that money there. So like, we would definitely would be still having that absolute goal of like the highest priority in our life, like basically to definitely to save positive that gentle baby from like the front man and basically and so like to achieve that goal like anyone might have formed a plan by now that is to enter into like the 2025 student as like one of like the VIPs for me or to like enter from the VIPs and that way to like get that easy access and straight up towards like the front man and that way for like the person like front man into like finding and saving like the baby of gentle would be along the lines completely all might have planned to quickly another incident sitting on so like this previous night. The previous night I think of like whose joy was released might have been when like anyone might have definitely infiltrated into probably into like against like what it might have been the case if anyone and might have taken all that money and might have hidden it somewhere safely. Maybe like exactly like how like the old man park had basically hidden all of this like reward money like which might have been affiliated like reward money of like winning that against like the also literally innocent that man of like the exact location where like New lives like I'm the like middle of the night like stealthy might have New might have of like stealing like all that money reward money of the dungeon from like the model like New might have hidden it or might have done a huge hole and basically on the ground and in front of like uh, the current location where like you will be staying and basically they are like you all might have given all that money of that Sanjo. And like the league, you will be basically waiting for like that 1 year time span to be over so that like the 2020 fight billion so that it will be time for like the 2025 billion so that like at that point you also will actually take all that money and end up as like a VIP. Is like the scenario that I'm looking on the thing and my visibility. So like definitely I'm looking like that was really like totally jump as well as like joy getting that absolute shocking surprises like a scenario where like they will be finding like for that money at like Sun Young like surrounding that's the scenario that I'm looking at. And at that point, it's like John as well as Joy like having that shocking realization that like they are for quest to like find and capture like from it has like totally uh, have this like major obstacle and they won't be able to like do it anymore without like all that reward money of that on like so definitely that might be very important for like Jumbo definitely like checking like the CCTV at like the motel and everything and everything like by then like all the CCTV this would be okay destroyed it's also like might be the case so like them like Janos like privately trying to like investigate and find out who could have been that might have known about that Sangam having all that money stored in like the model every who could have been that would have stolen all that money from that Sangam model would be along the lines like Jumbo privately trying to like uh, find out and like definitely Jumbo since currently Jumbo is not working as like so but like Liam like and since like sort of to like see them and since like in like the past like the student building had like gone through that self percent so that way like but for that evidence getting something to like experience in the world that way like so leave it to the person like and people like example, like the police officer when like the police chief, like other than like a red would give the red the game uniform, but like the mark like that, like the police chief might have eventually from when he might have showed up to like a station that he might have gone from like destroyed position like other than that, like I mean like even like the police chief even to the community and you have to really know evidence that don't solid evidence that don't connecting to like the claims of like example about like the Olympic games that are so like even like the person like the scenario being like all that money in like London's money going missing and they believe that host not being able that way not being able to like seek the help of like the police station to search and find out who was that like had stolen like or that money from like London's model and that way like I'm the different example and was doing that like private investigation that's really trying to like find out who it was that had stolen like that money. But like I'm the different like them not being able to like find it and other like as their private investigation will be going on like eventually it ending up being almost time for like the 2025 speaking like the scenario that I'm so at that point, I'm looking for like Junko totally getting just right to like the point of like Junko. And that point, that totally managing to that Junko totally by sheer coincidence that one night like ending up like running into like another Takiji guy, like basically and like really another uh random person like playing like the Takiji game with on the subway with like another Takiji like scenario there. And that way like I'm just like Junko getting his hands on like the escape card like scenario that even though that I knew faculty guy would be still escaping like I'm still managing like it just hands on like that game card at that point from the person who will be like playing like that like game against like that new like guys like that to the scenario that I that way like jump totally owning like the game with that card and I'm looking like at that point as well maybe I'm looking like seeing that in hopes that will be picking up like the card and at that point, like Django saying that he wants to end like the game in like 2025, and like definitely that would be that definitely I'm going to hear Django's voice itself, like I'm different that in hoping behind that stop because like at that point I'm just bringing out like you recognizing Django's voice and like realize eventually realizing that like having like sort of definitely in whole even the person we having that soft one of uh towards like definitely definitely realizing that like Django as well is going to like and looking to started attempting to like enter into like the 25 to get them the line like movie and that's what movie realization. Yet like I'm different that info not being able to info that only having that high really that seeing like the students and like and having his own roles connected to like the students and everything. So definitely like especially those of like the person that coach and that wants to like play like the students that the way example would be doing that really I know would be something that like one to like the roles might not be able to like extend. Might be the case of everyone to so like that way for in whole like painfully accepting like examples like deserve to like enter into like the 2025 students I think which that way like example entering into like the 2025 student as like a student candidate basically with that absolute goal to like basically to eventually like not either that would be think about this either like for like that would be only at that point of be prioritizing the prioritizing to like basically wait for like an opening. So that was just in like to like basically wait for like an opening for like example to like escape and basically make it towards like government info in that way, for example, to like catch up and stop and that and from and change in one stop like then that your experience and like within the thing also here I'm like would be like the highest priority for Django and like Django would be also thinking of like considering like wasn't there like Django even failing at that and if that happens then for like Django to like definitely win like if that happen then for like Django to like ensure that Django makes it to winning like the experience in like 2025 for that like Jumbo will be getting all that reward money for that like just all that reward money. Jumbo even if that Jumbo makes it towards like the weekend and then like the 25 million and still uh it's not being able it's not ends up not being able to like make it towards like capturing info. Then still at least Jumbo will have more that reward money to like actually uh once again restart the black hole investigation trying to like make it towards like would be along the lines like Jumbo getting or like Jumbo also saying that like with all that money like Jumbo might be able to like even enter into like the 2026 billions as like a VIP. So that way we'll be getting that access towards that. involved also like along the lines like the whole thing is definitely not and planning is definitely not doing it. So like that way like it is like the 2025 students and right out of the looking for like Janho entering as like a student candidate and while we also be entering simultaneously we also be also entering into like 2025 students as like one criteria is definitely not correct. So that way we are getting that access to info the manage and like that they like neo threatening that performance info to that reveal that the location of the baby and like like info like kind of fearless man of like from your refusing. And at that point I'm like neo things also super frustrated that like neo probably maybe at that point like eliminating info and they you then going on a rampage and like eliminating all the realities as well. It's like the scenario that I'm right. Yeah, like I'm like still neo at that point will be probably feeding those info and I'm going to news will definitely will be something to that the room of like the front like desperately and like then like New York as like New York will be about to lose hope and give up like and that they last again like New York so me finding out a clue connecting to that within like the front of like New York so me finding out a clue connecting to the whereabouts of like Junky's baby. Not like Junky's of like living the scenario. And at that point, like choosing the experience that ending with like neo like totally with like neo like hopeful face like only one finding out that clue about like the whereabouts of the baby. There's like living the scenario that I'm going to take and okay, so like the main of the scenario that I'm sitting on this definitely that like the present situation of like people who most likely involved definitely having not much time left so this definitely having some sort of like a need in a sense like definitely so like we have different like in as well as like the Rati guy as well as like Portman Park or the wrong like info it might be having absolutely no one that like info would be able to like trust you like taking care of like the daily thing and the like info definitely to be bonding once like that baby grows up and becomes and around to like eventually since that baby left to this like the winner of like certain important like a the winner like that will be part of like that golden rule that like only a winner of like game will be deserving to like run like this games that rule which might have been passed down from like in from like golden creator to like in to from in to like think what might be the case so like at least from the point of view, people would only strongly feeling strongly would be faithful like the certainty that like might be faithful that strong certainty that like info won't be around by the time that the baby grows up. So like until that point for like in hope to have like the only person in hope like so like in hope would be able to would be feeling as if like in hope would like trust to take care of like the baby until like the baby grows up and becomes enough. Would be that single person would be that person would be John Hope alone and this might be the sole reason for like in hope leaving like the baby like then this got like the winner of the president in the like the baby was like John Hope right now. It's definitely my friend. So like just the last time, like, might have been really something for like, uh, someone to like basically that, people could like only trust to like take good care of the baby and like, like, having like the back of mind, like, regardless of who member of info might have found like in the back, mind, like, info might have always felt that strongly that it be still at the last moment, like, might have totally given up on assigning those person that info might have wanted to like trust and want to assign to like take up the thing might have been the case with anyone until finally info might have ended up with like thinking of that Jumbo to have Jumbo take care of like, the range until like the range over. Might be what might have happened is definitely not the correct. So definitely still it was planned according to like it was planned would be definitely to like eventually pass on the baton to like like once like the baby grows up to become another like at that point for like it would be absolutely desperate to like definitely pass on like the baton of like owning like against to that person at that point is definitely not correct. So like until that point like I'm like it will be also to the point that like the students won't be able to like run from like uh, maybe like 2025 or like from 2026 because like info might be most likely not having much time left. So definitely. So it will be pointed about like a collection holding on like the being like that gap until like the baby grows up until like basically info will be able to like pass out like the baton to like the baby. In the around the line like the thing like info you also think that like the public like the winner of like the winner of like the 25 students possibly being like uh, possibly having that same mindset as that like info to be able to like properly run like the student on like 2020 also along the lines info doing only offer. So like definitely info would be definitely not at all willing at all to like give up on like the baby to like eventually from like the students and lecturers can do the on like the baby also. They are like totally protecting like the baby eventually ending up falling into that more hands like the scenario that I'm going to bring. So like once you do my that it will have definitely been near that would have fallen like sun of like money from like the mountain and basically near entering like the 2025 game that's like a VIP and like near threatening and eventually eliminating like the scenario that I'm going to play. And then like I'm going like New York while the really going through like the command room that they finally finding like a flow connecting to like the person whereabouts of like the baby as like being as like the baby being at like the location of like Jumbo and that way like this New York that way through that flow. So it's like I'm totally praying that New York to find like the command room like New York finally making it to like the location of that jungle. And that way like I'm like you're finally making it towards like the baby and fighting like the baby at that point like the scenario that I'm going and like from that point on like okay and I'm going like that not like being like the end of like season 3 of like season. But still I'm going like things sorting out New York being able to like sort things out of like Jumbo at that point to eventually get Jumbo to like totally either give up like the baby to or like I'm putting by then like John Juan was putting like possibly maybe having their own attached to like the baby. So that like I'm putting maybe like that resulting in like New would be like sort of threat to adopt like the baby like I'm putting that was situation even the resulting in like basically New wanting to like marry John Ho and I'm putting like that way eventually like John Ho saying yes and I'm putting like New and John Ho getting married. Well, like the possibility that I'm coming for like maybe for like info to like so to take advantage of like that was like desperate plans to like make it towards like info by probably like info probably attempting to like have like to the point where different like I'm so different like info won't be having time left like I'm like info probably deciding to like have jump up be like to probably change jump up into like even though info wasn't able to in the case of like London like info probably saying that basically maybe like the case of example like info be might appearing that is changing or like changing that channel's mind that into that basically like accepting the same ideology as that of that info and that way to that way I'm maybe that to do all that like info totally that by the time like it's the time for like 2020 for like the 2025 students like something like maybe that for getting like a skill game simulation start as like a scripting candidate for like example which is like a board to like make it towards like make it towards like and gathering thing whole like therefore only accepting that and like entering as like a Indian candidate while like assigning his choice to like take care of the Canadian level. So like that way like Chang Ho like entering into like the Indian vice Indian like a Indian candidate and like in hope will be probably at that point like as in hope still being an expert on math even though in hope won't have much time left and in hope probably holding on to that hope that is the Chang Ho like journey in like the 2025 students like involving the ability to like how Django to change Django and have Django take up like the ideology of that symbol and to that eventually throw an unfair manner to like how Django to still be in an unfair manner like multiple times actually Django out that way to like ensure that like Django makes it to eventually becoming like the winner of like the 2025 studios and that way to eventually pass on at that point to like eventually pass on like the baton of like running experience from Jack Info to like Jack Info to the one like Info we only hoping and like Info even giving that the baby of like Junkie to that Janko like Info but also hoping that basically that way that Janko Info is able to like change Janko into like being like to take into taking up like the mindset of that Info then like since like Janko is like the person that's like taking care of like Junkie's baby the already like the winner of the winter was been like so that one like so really grows up into like and at that point like John Hope himself will be passing on like the baton to that to that person in next future and that person will be running next game like so this also around the line of male in hope will be okay planning so also like position that I'm applying so like maybe it might be all part of this like secret and the plan of like info that like info next might have give us jump out like the way to take might be like also like suggest lecture of that I'm going to go right and I'm framing. Okay, so like today my friends and right now is definitely for like once like me will be making it towards let's say and like, at that point I'm totally preparing for like that was happening because like I'm just trying like but the by the order to be hopeful thing and that would be intense and put out like of like the possibility of like it actually being like depend on like the at that point I'm like that definitely I would bring like there will be that birthmark from like neos like actual note. So like I'm looking like neo setting for like the birthmark and I'm looking like neo for me. Because it might not have been like a great number of years and like neo might have lost or might have been the case of the new preparation. So definitely neo checking for that birthmark and I'm looking that birthmark to be only looking at that in that way like an instant confirm it that that's happening for like show and extremely disappointing and painful confirmation happening for like neo that way that's not neo that top is like in the scenario that I'm looking for. And so like that stock like I'm looking like in New York would be like a hard rock and I'm expecting on that point itself like will be in that kind of like state and like New York straight away without even thinking about like to that world like and like New York straight away taking like the next flight and then be returning back to returning back to countries like the South and that while traveling in that flight like I'm at that point is might be when I was like New York would be remembering and thinking back and remembering back during like towards the end of section what we can definitely not have seen that baby fall by itself on the top of like the thing like that whose game and it then like Neo not being able to like find that baby and it's like Neo might have even frantically end up really search even in that like ship carrying like a game was only while assuming that like one of the game workers might have taken like the baby and like pain of like not being able to find that baby that all of that like I'm memories like I'm at that point that flight like I'm that was into that mind so like at that point like just fixing in her mind like definitely to like save that baby because like Neola at that point would have totally fixed in her mind that was able so would have really been like the front man that might have taken like the game. So like Neola at that point, Neola at that point deciding to like definitely and trying to like settle the only good game as like this game worked out once again and basically with that absolute goal to like definitely that way that even though without the money still as like look like the version of that to take advantage of the version of like a game worked out and that way to like make it towards like so that absolute to like make it towards like a front man and to like threaten like the front man to that take it posing like the front man to like reveal like the information about like the background of that your who was like the winner of like the years and that way for like Neo to eventually find her, save her and adopt her. Might be along the lines like Neo and that point will be sitting in her mind and that way like I'm like Neo entering like better identifies again with like a scheme of on the game. There's like in the scenario that I'm in order to read. While I'm like in the case of like Django, I'm going to bring like for like 25 games like I'm doing Django to be the season of card as well. Card of invitations definitely will bring it, but like Django, I'm calling that number and like to his straight away telling that he wants to end up in the like the 2025 game as like a VIP because of like the person like I think I have given all that money to like the people to make Django. So like Django will be probably trying to like attempting to take advantage of like him having all that money like also to like enter into like the 21st game as like a VIP and that way to like get that easy access to like the front manager and basically that way to like jump to like achieve his goal of like saving like jump attempting but like I'm doing like that phone call like I'm doing like to get card like one like jump recording like I'm doing like the front manager telling jump according acting according to that in hopes that match it might like to the jump into like having like exact mindset as also like I'm doing while jump over the attempting to like enter into like 25 billion as like a VIP I'm looking like in hopes of like a few things that like and telling jump that that's not possible and basically for that but still Janko totally making that offer to like Janko that basically Janko still can't enter as like in like the 2025 game as like a game candidate if like Janko wants to be along the lines and like uh in a whole manner like involved at that point would be running back to like Janko like this scenario that Janko at that point would be absolutely shocked that involved will even be saying specific and like Janko still so like it might have been in himself that might have taken or that reward money of that Sangyong and like Sanborn Motors and might have that taken all that money and might have had that absolute priority to like basically to have that Sangyong like thought things like Sangyong like the money that Sangyong has earned from winning like the students basically like people might have yes so that may might have today I'm looking right now that they since like the Sangyong is thought like the baby was like the winner of the 24th stadium flag. So definitely I would like that money that with sum of money that Janko got might I believe not got the Sangyong like reward money, but like might be that the reward money belong to that the judges sort of belong to the baby. Who's like the winner of due to like baby league the winner of the for might be the case, might be that you're the position that live and pressure, whereas like that the reward money of like Sangyong like a like it might have been of like a priority for like involved to not have like the reward money of like Sangyong from winning expedition stadium that was like information only seeing as like something that like Sangyong had earned like to not have that for that reward money like basically like get stolen. So like I think what it might have been Janho yet like at that point of that up to determination like totally agreeing and like accepting and this that way like Janho ending up entering like a student candidate in like the 2025 students in which like New York would be like entering as like a student of is like in the scenario and final scenario of like the degree of like some games like the person divided so like you might have had that those necessary kind of like priorities to like ensure that basically someone's reward money only gets like inherited by like doesn't get stolen and only gets inherited by like someone's own bread like someone's might be of that extreme like priority that info might have had. So like that way info might have stolen like all that reward money of text on next more and might have straight away left off to like USA to America to deliver like maybe I'm like Sangyong stop and like Sangyong like quite might be not even aware even to the person about like Sangyong like elimination. So like to break that news about like Sangyong elimination in like the most certain manner could only reveal that like Sanjay had been eliminated and to like most likely tell some sort of the liberal right now for it to be like info that would have showed up in front of like this house in like the United States. This might be like the house where like Sanjay store and it's quite clear and like there totally putting right now for like info to like deliver the news about like Sanjay's like elimination and the and like lying and saying like lying about like Sanjay like elimination as like of having occurred during some accident or something. We are client number and right now for like enforcing like lies to them and basically to also tell them that basically before Sanjay like elimination that Sanjay had like made all this like money and basically all this wealth and basically had and he had certain a will or like he wanted he had certain a will that saying that basically if that like the day is like no more to like basically to hand over that all of it like well to his laptop. So the along the lines I'm looking right now in hope would be telling uh going up and telling to like someone that sort of to like scenario that that way like I'm going like Sangyon like its wife and his like now like basically getting all that reward money of like Sangyon except yeah like all that reward money would be like actually given to like Sangyon's like it's like in the scenario that I'm developing and I was bring like by now like basically for many years like passing with like Sangyong like kind of and not even like have any sort of contact with Sangyong like I'm different like by now like Sangyong's stuff might have changed and might have so much and might have totally forgotten about like Sangyong and might have probably moved off uh, uh, and all that might have happened. So definitely I was bring right now one like info could be delivering like the news about like Sangyong's like passing as well as like at that point, I was trying to thought of like not being extremely sad or like shocked or anything like that. I'm looking like kind of thought of like Sanjay like things quite like the first thing is about song at that point hearing that news. But like I'm thinking that one like info would be like revealing to them that basically about like Sanjay well and basically Sanjay wanting like kind of sort of like encourage that well then like once like in you're revealing that like that huge sum of money like at that point I'm looking like about Sanjay like expired as well as I got like sort of in an extremely intuitive manner, like being extremely excited and like being extremely joyful at that point like of having suddenly gained all that wealth and that steadily by those pension like it's like to get out that saying while without any facial expression like it was like definitely that from his point of view that might have been definitely the exact reaction that like info might have been by info like showing up by info might have been showing on his way showing up to to show up to that Sangyeon's like daughter friend. This might have been like the exact, according to like in his ideology, like this might have been like the exact kind of like a reaction that like might have expected from the black son was that right and this like and that's definitely like seeing that like I'm feeling like for that leaving the house of that Sangyeon's like of like with that feeling of the like absolute confirmation of that really like of that feeling that like within that time like important like ideology was like totally right for enough like the scenario that I'm looking for the thing I was getting. Okay, so like the next thing that might be presentation by like the most likely that Sanjung's like containing all of like Sanjung's like well which will be most likely contained within like the black box that like Sanjung's product in the right now totally accepting and like on finding out about like the extent of like Sanjung's well like Sanjung sort of like jumping with joy with that absolute excitement of like that sudden of gaining that all that sudden with like the scenario that is in the